In this video, I'll discuss if you're better off buying or leasing a vehicle, and we're starting right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Keystone Financial Academy. My name is Elliot, and in this video I want to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of buying versus leasing a car. The problem is that there isn't really a cut and dried answer here, and which is better, buying or leasing really depends on your personal situation, your personal finances, and your specific needs. Buying has always been the traditional route, but as of the last 10 years or so, leasing has risen up to be the go-to approach. In the end, you really have to weigh all the pros and cons, and that's exactly what I'll be doing here. Alright, let's get into it, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and find it useful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. So when it comes to getting a new car, the two main approaches are, of course, to buy one or to lease one. Now in this video, I'll only discuss new cars, but of course you can buy and sometimes even lease a used car, and sometimes that is the more sensible approach, but that is a topic for another day in another video. Let's tackle buying a new car first. When you buy, you generally have two options to pay for it. The first is to pay the full price on the spot, or in cash, as some people say. Now a quick side note, when you hear paying cash, that's speaking figuratively. You don't actually want to bring $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in cash to a dealership, because anything over $10,000 will force the dealer to file some paperwork with the IRS. So instead, a certified check or a bank check is what you would actually bring. But anyway, most people don't actually do this because with today's new car prices, very few people actually have that much liquid capital at their disposal. So what most people actually do is they finance their purchase by putting some money down and then maybe getting some cash for their trade-in. And finally, a loan is arranged and they make monthly payments. Now that is essentially what buying is all about. Now, what exactly is leasing? Although they're certainly not the same thing, you can think of leasing as long-term renting, in the sense that you never own the car, you just make monthly payments for the right to drive it. What exactly are you paying for when you make payments in a lease? Well, in one word, depreciation. The car drops in value as soon as you drive it off the lot, and it continues to drop in value over the years. Annual lease payments are calculated to cover this depreciation plus a profit for the dealer. When you're done with the lease, you typically return it to the same place that you got it, and they will resell the car for the remainder of its value. You can also opt to purchase the vehicle after the lease is up, but that typically turns out to be quite a bit more expensive for you. So the typical leased car is just given back to the dealer, and the customer either leases another car or buys one, while the car that he or she returned just goes into the pre-owned lot to be sold off. So that was a brief description of buying and leasing. Let's now go through the pros and cons and discuss a few more details as we go. Perhaps the biggest consideration in buying is the fact that you will own the vehicle or have full equity in it once you pay it off completely. Now, is this a pro or a con? Well, that depends on how long you are planning to hold on to it in the first place and how reliable that vehicle is. Owning is the cheapest way to drive a vehicle in the long term, and if it's a historically reliable model, they'll give you years of trouble-free service, and you're the type that drives a vehicle until the wheels fall off, then buying is absolutely the way to go. If, however, you know that you're going to want that new car smell after just a few years, or you just had to have that vehicle that was rated as less than reliable, then leasing is more for you. You will then drive the car in its most trouble-free years, and after 2 or 3 of them, you just trade it in for a newer model. Okay, so that was the vehicle itself, but what about cost? Well, if you're concerned about monthly payments, in general, you will be paying more when buying versus leasing. The reason is simple. When buying, you're required to pay off the entire amount in a set period of time, while with leasing, you're paying for mostly just the depreciation. And in fact, people will often lease a vehicle that is far too expensive for them to flat out buy, because these monthly payments are far smaller than they would be if they were to finance an actual purchase. Now, some buyers try to lower the monthly payments by stretching out the loan for 4, 5, 6, even 8 years, but that is risky because you will be upside down on your loan, meaning that you owe far more on the loan than your car is worth, and you may may stay that way for quite a long time as you pay down the car. Needless to say, longer loans also cost you more in interest. So these are the two main points to consider right off the bat: your desire to keep or trade in the vehicle down the road and the costs involved. However, there's quite a bit more to consider when you talk about buying versus leasing. Let's tackle a few more issues in no particular order. What if, for example, you like to mod your vehicle? Perhaps a custom exhaust or performance headers or bodywork? Well, forget doing any of that if you're leasing. The dealer will not allow anything except maybe a professionally done window tint. So if you do like to tinker with and modify what you drive, then buying is the way to go for you. You then own the vehicle and can do whatever you want, but of course be careful because some mods will lower resale value down the road. What about mileage driven? That is another major concern and a huge con of leasing. The value of a vehicle is closely tied to its mileage, and if you're returning a car after a 3-year lease with 200,000 miles on it, the dealer's really not going to like that because he's just not going to be able to resell that vehicle. Because of this, there are strict mileage limits that are allowed with a lease, typically 12,000 to 15,000 miles or so per year. And if you return a car at the end of the lease above the allowed total mileage, you're going to end up paying quite a surcharge for each extra mile above the limit, typically about 15 cents per mile, which adds up pretty quickly. So bottom line, if you're a traveling salesman or you like to just take road trips every other week, then leasing is not for you and buying is the much better option. Another factor to consider is getting out of a purchase or a lease. Let's say, for example, you absolutely hate the car or just can't afford the payments anymore. While neither is particularly easy, at least when you purchase the vehicle, you can sell it, and assuming you took care of it and retained its value, you will usually turn a profit in excess of the loan and be able to pay it back. With leasing, it's much harder to flat out break a lease contract, but there's always ways around this, such as using a website like leasetrader.com, where you do lease swaps and assign your lease to another person who may be interested in your car. Now, it may seem like I listed quite a few cons to leasing in the last few minutes of this video, but actually there are a few pros that are very much worth mentioning. Leases are very good for small businesses where you could write off the lease payments as a business deduction. And in fact, for many years it was the business community that held the majority of leases in this country, and this was the case up until about 10 years ago when the consumer started to lease a lot more. Small business owners typically lease just about everything from company transport cars, delivery vans, and even construction equipment, and the tax advantages with leases to a business are quite significant. The main advantages to a consumer who is not necessarily a business owner is the fact that they can drive a much more upscale vehicle that they could afford by buying, and of course having a new one in the driveway every 2 to 3 years. And with that comes the peace of mind that you never have to worry about maintenance because all new cars today come with an extensive warranty for at least 2 to 3 years that you have the lease, if not longer. When your lease is up, lease trade-ins are also relatively hassle-free. You just drop off your off-lease vehicle and assuming there's no issues, you could be driving off with a new lease in just an hour or two. So these are the basics of buying versus leasing. In all cases, be sure to negotiate extensively no matter how you're acquiring a vehicle. With a lease, for example, you should always negotiate the full vehicle price first and only then move on to the other items such as the money factor, which is the interest rate on the lease loan. If you have a trade-in, negotiate the value of that trade-in separately, and don't ever focus on just the monthly payment. I will make a few more very detailed videos on all of these topics in the near future, so keep an eye out for them. Alright, if you've enjoyed this video and found it useful, please do consider subscribing to the channel, helps me out a lot, and be sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the upcoming videos just like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.